Season 2, Episode 9 of the MedTech World Podcast. And today we will be speaking to Franz Pfister, CEO of Deepc OS. Is it related to the sea? Let's check out in the interview. Welcome, Franz. It's such a pleasure to see you on the MedTech World Podcast. And I still remember meeting you on the stand in the exhibitors area at the MedTech World. And what was the great thing about it was that Ryan introduced me to you. And I was like having this really cool chat with you. And I was really impressed then how your background as a doctor and also your background in data science took you to this point where you guys are offering a pretty simple, plug and play, so to speak, for radiology AI. And I'd love to hear more about it today, Franz. But before I want to go a bit more to the basics. Of course, like any podcast, I would have a look at your LinkedIn profile and I could see that you could have like a really interesting background. Can you tell us more about it? Can you tell us about your digital health journey and like what brought you on the MedTech World Podcast,
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Stefan. It's great to be here. And I also recall very well when we first met. So likewise, I was truly inspired by your background and profile and your work. So really happy to be on the podcast today, and I'll just start with my background. So my background is in medicine. I'm a medical doctor by training. I visited medical school in Munich in Germany and then Boston in the US. And in Boston, I got to know a different healthcare system, which I found quite exciting, but also I got in touch with a totally different world in terms of entrepreneurship and startups. So what I really admired in the US was this ability of creative people to bring new technologies from research to the bedside or into the hospital. And when I came back to Germany in 2012, I really was inspired and wanted to pursue such a path at some point in the future myself. Nevertheless, I finished my doctorate in neuroscience, first did all of my homework that I had to do, finished my doctoral degree in medicine, and then started actually a clinician's pathway because I wanted to get some exposure to the patients, to actual clinical care. So I was working in the field of neurology, focusing on Parkinson's disease patients and other movement disorders, as well as stroke and some other neurological diseases. And during that time, did an MBA in healthcare management to at least understand a little bit the intricacies of economics and business, especially in the field of healthcare. And it was during that time where I got really intrigued by digital technologies. And that's for a simple reason. I love the work as a doctor in the hospital, but it's very draining. You are working late hours, you're having night shifts, and at some point you are really feeling that you're at your physical limit. You can't scale anymore. So you can help 20 patients at the ward or 25 patients, but at some point you reach your natural limits. And I felt that technology would really remove those borders, not only in terms of you can scale your knowledge much, much further, but also it would remove any geographical and time borders. And that's what I found super exciting back then. Making the impact that you can have as a medical doctor much, much more scalable. So I got involved in a couple of digital projects. It was early days, I must say. And especially we had been working in the field of machine learning with wearable sensors with the aim to capture the clinical symptoms of Parkinson's disease patients in a continuous way. And during those research projects, I got really into artificial intelligence and machine learning. And at some point decided that I want to dive deep into that field, not only scratch the surface, and decided to actually leave the hospital and go back to school and do another master's in data science machine learning. So to my surprise, they accepted me, although I was a medical doctor and didn't have like a computer science or statistics background, but kind of were interested in having like a domain expert getting into the field. And I pursued that master's program, and I'm very grateful and happy that I did, because for the last years, I had the privilege to work with great people, inspiring people, at this intersection of medicine and AI, and make at least a very small contribution to the transformation, the digital transformation that healthcare field is currently going through. So that's in a nutshell where I'm coming from and what's my background.
Wow, quite a story there. And I can see like that you decided to kind of like learn deep and, really practice deep learning, both from a life perspective also, but also from data science point of view. Pretty cool stuff there. And maybe even I might consider doing something of the sort. But maybe instead of taking an MSc, I just take up Python, get started with Python, especially this year. I really want to kick that off and, and start making sense out of all of this. I'm really excited even there. But I know that but at MedTech World, we talked about 𝐷eepC OS. And I was looking at your LinkedIn profile and there was something about like Ocean Protocol. And then I said 𝐷eepC, Ocean Protocol. Like, where did this name come from? Was it something like 𝐷eepC, like the deep sea of AI solutions that we're getting lost in? I don't know. I'm just like really curious about the name. And I'd love that you tell me more about 𝐷eepC OS, especially if it would be really great, especially for our audience, if you are already working with healthcare organizations or healthcare professions. I'd love to really, really hear more. I'm really excited to hear about that.
No, I'm very happy to give you an insight into that world. So first of all, regarding the name, it's actually quite a funny coincidence because the project I was working on before 𝐷eepC was in fact called Ocean Protocol. It was in the blockchain Web 3.0 decentralized domain, where we were building a platform to make data exchange, especially private data asset exchange, much more scalable and accessible. And I contributed to that project with my expertise in the healthcare domain, where you have like vast amounts of sensitive data that you want to protect, and you want to protect the privacy of the respective individuals. So at some point, end of 2019, we decided together with a couple of co-founders that we wanted to tackle a new field, and we launched 𝐷eepC, co-founded 𝐷eepC. The name is actually a total coincidence. There is a double meaning to it. On the one hand, it's like deep seeing, like that was a time when all of the cool startups had the deep in the name, like DeepMind, DeepL. So we called it 𝐷eepC. Right. So okay. Seeing deep, and the other one is indeed like the 𝐷eepC, where we would enable users to look below the surface and see everything that's below the surface. So what do we do with 𝐷eepC? We had been looking at a specific field in medicine for quite some time. That's radiology, medical imaging, like CT, X-ray, mammography, MRI imaging. Indeed, we had developed some algorithms ourselves together with some neuroradiologists here at the Technical University in Munich. Okay. And we were excited about it because we could get our hands dirty. So it's really a hands-on field. Like everyone kind of played around with radiology data back in the days, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, because that's the domain where you have access to data. You have the data available. That's not a given in medicine. Often you have the data in an analog form, and you can't really use it for machine learning purposes. And you have the privilege to have labeled data because you have radiology reports, which you could use to train classifiers or other supervised machine learning methods. So it's kind of obvious that you would start in that field because just the data is available. And there are huge data repositories which you could use back then to get things started. And we were not alone. There were many projects out there, many manifested and materialized in startups at some point. And at some point we realized, okay, there are like 30, 40, 50 startups that are bringing to market software as a medical device just for radiology. And all of those solutions are specific point solutions targeting one indication field: breast cancer, fracture detection, intracranial hemorrhage detection, you name it. So we were sitting together and asking ourselves like this one critical question: do we want to be one of those companies who is adding another use case and so on? Or are there maybe already experts out there in the field and a little bit more mature companies that are already in the market, have the experience and have this kind of time advantage, if you will? So we went back to the whiteboard and eventually pivoted our initial approach to develop algorithms for the medical field. And the reason behind that is we kind of anticipated that today it's going to be 30, 40, 50. Tomorrow it's going to be more algorithms. And at some point in the future, it's going to be hundreds or even thousands. And once those great technologies hit the market, clinicians, managers, hospital IT will not be able to kind of cope with the variety of those new technologies, and then also with the different intricacies of setting everything up and managing those technologies. Yeah. So eventually we thought it might be smarter that we are focusing on building a platform which would really facilitate the adoption and the scalable adoption of those new AI technologies in the radiology field. And that's what we did. That was the foundation for Deepc OS, which is an AI operating system for the field of radiology. And in essence, we have built many different software components that would facilitate the scalable adoption of AI. The core component that we've built, and there are many more adjacent components to that, but the core component is an AI marketplace where we are integrating those great AI solutions from manufacturers all around the globe that we partner and contract, and they bring those AI solutions to our cloud in a Dockerized, packetized fashion. And then with a single installation with the customer, we are able to give hospitals access to all of those great solutions. And it makes perfect sense because often AI developers are really, really good and want to spend their time, resources, and energy on building the best technology. And they are building a lot of cost and overhead to distribute those technologies. Yeah. And on the other hand, hospitals really struggle to find those best technologies and then to adopt those best technologies, because you always need to go through the same processes of curating those AI solutions, finding regulatory compliance, checking data privacy, cybersecurity. Then you need to eventually set up the IT, maybe even buy hardware to run those solutions. You need to set up contracts with each and every of those solution providers. There are different jurisdiction areas, etc. So you're really spending your time on those tasks where you're neither good at nor you want to spend your time with those tasks.
Franz, just remind me. Are you also taking care of the billing? That means, do customers pay 𝐷eepc OS, or and then the 𝐷eepc OS kind of tackles all those like costs with the developers? How does it work?
Yes, we do. And in essence, we do the whole end-to-end process. So all the bits and pieces that you would have if you go direct with a single vendor, where everything is very heterogeneous, we have everything unified. So we have already done the curation and the benchmarking. We've already done all the checks for compliance. We have one unified data privacy framework, one unified cybersecurity framework. We have one contract, one billing, one service and support framework. Everything is unified. And that's the beauty of it, because it's just so much easier. And then, of course, technology-wise, it's also unified.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty fantastic, really making it easy for healthcare organizations to, get started even, because sometimes they might not know where to get started, and then they just connect to this AI marketplace, and then they just choose, and they just get started. But if I may ask, maybe you can tell us, are you already working with some healthcare organizations? Maybe you can tell us, or is there something happening? There? It would be great for our audience.
No, absolutely. So we had the privilege to set up some prime partnerships over the last 2 years with various customers all across Europe. And it's all kinds of customers. It includes, for example, university hospitals, or it includes like whole hospital chains, or outpatient imaging centers. And the kind of need in terms of workflow need for those customers is always a little bit different, because they are treating different patients. For example, like a huge university hospital might have more emergency patients, for instance, and look at stroke care pathways or trauma pathways, whereas like an outpatient center would look at more quantitative use cases that really takes a lot of work off their shoulders. So that's part of what we do, and our amazing sales guys and the whole team supports this consultative approach. As you just said yourself, Stefan, it's a very new field, and customers are interested in the field, especially as radiologists have now overcome that initial skepticism and realize, hey, this is really a cool technology that we want to adopt, but still it's early days. So what we are offering them is taking them by the hand, also helping them with the education, what solutions could help them, sometimes even opening their eyes to solutions that they have never heard of before, and really taking them by the hand and guiding them through this new AI technology jungle.
Wow, wonderful. I love it, like AI technology jungle. I think that's definitely a key word to remember. But, looking at this, let's say maybe a jungle, which possibly you guys are, making a bit of a pathway through, to help healthcare organizations kind of figure out. And I can't not ask you, like, so in your opinion, like, what does the future look like for digital health and medtech, and how, 𝐷eepc OS possibly fits into the picture? How do you see this evolving?
Absolutely. And obviously this goes far beyond radiology and what we do with 𝐷eepc. And I'm happy to share my perspective. So obviously, and that's in my DNA, I am convinced that the future of healthcare is going to be data-driven. Healthcare has always been a data-driven field, but the pace and the richness of data, which will cater decision-making and eventually precision care, it's just so much bigger than we probably can even imagine today. And I'm always trying to make that analogy where let's look back at how medicine was practiced 100 years ago. It's on the time scale of human life, that's nothing. But if you just look at the developments of the last 100 years, it feels almost very basic how we practiced medicine 100 years ago. Yeah, it was just the advent of antibiotics hasn't even happened, and so many more discoveries and technologies had entered the arena of healthcare just in those last 100 years. But then imagine in the year 2123 how we will look at today. Probably it's going to be a similar feeling. Yes, you get my point, right?
Yeah, I think they'll be like, what the hell did those guys do? They were like playing with Python and AI. Like, I mean, come on, what a... But then again, I think recently I actually had something like Franz. I had like a very funny, interesting experience recently where I saw a post actually promoting, for example, a historical book on medicine in Malta. And it's kind of made me think like how important it is at times to look back to see how far you've progressed, and it really, really intrigues me what you said, and I'd really like to kind of maybe ask you, like, because now you mentioned how I practiced 100 years ago, but do you see a role for 𝐷eepc OS, maybe moving beyond radiology AI? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe to give some context before I answer that question, where medicine and healthcare will steer towards in general. I said, like, I think the future is going to be very data driven. Yeah. And I see those two kind of vectors where technology can really benefit in terms of patient care. There are, of course, many other fields like drug discovery, etc. But just focusing on patient care, I think there will be a huge breakthrough in terms of continuous monitoring and care, and then multimodal diagnostics. And let me give you a little bit of insight what I mean by that. Especially in chronic disease nowadays, we are looking at a point care approach. It's point diagnostics. We are taking lab values. We're taking an MRI scan once a year or twice a year or maybe every second year. But it's always like a snapshot of information that we get. Mm-hmm. Like chronic disease patients like Parkinson's or diabetes patients, they see their doctors every quarter, every half year, etc. But you always get the snapshot of information. With the advent of wearables and the capabilities of digesting the huge amounts of data that they produce, for instance, we can gain much more insights into the patient's well-being and then also trigger individualized care approaches. So that's this one growth vector, not happening today because it's just not feasible and not possible. And then the other one is obviously the combination of different data sources, which is rarely happening today, which I refer to as multimodal diagnostics, will be a huge transformation driver for medicine in the future. And obviously we would play a role in that second area, looking at different verticals beyond radiology, which of course we are currently observing the trends in the market. And I can only say, stay tuned. Let's see what the future will bring.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. And believe it or not, we're coming to the end. We're coming to the end of the podcast, but we're not going to leave you with one little surprise. We're going to leave you with one little surprise, and that's the opportunity for you for 1 minute, to raise awareness on any specific topic of your choice. It doesn't have to be healthcare. It can be anything, but you have an opportunity. And with that in mind, 1 minute, go for it.
That's really a surprise, I would say. So let me have a little thought on that. Yeah, I think that one topic I would choose is really collaboration in healthcare, and especially in digital health. And I would like to raise awareness regarding this topic because I've seen that often collaboration is not happening because there are different stakeholders involved that have different incentives, but also different backgrounds specifically. And often there is a little overlap in terms of understanding where the other stakeholder group is coming from. And I saw the best and most innovative things happen in the field of digital health when people from different backgrounds were coming together, literally sitting at a table, opening up their minds and just talk and discuss and talk about their challenges, also the opportunities that they see, start to understand each other, and then form ideas together. And I think this is a really powerful way of coming up with innovation in that field. And it's actually a must, it's mandatory. So I would encourage anyone coming from medicine, coming from a technology background, or coming from a management background to grab their peers and just sit on the table.
Well done. Nice. I think you went a little bit more than 1 minute there, but I loved it.
I had to think about it.
I understand. But yet again, another unique perspective. Like this 1 minute is really magical, and I've been mentioning this before because all the time something new comes up. But with that in mind, we come to the end of the podcast. Dankeschön, Franz, and I would like to invite our audience to follow us on the MedTech World socials on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. And with that in mind, grazie ħafna. Thank you. Saha. Bye.